Hey, Internet, how are we doing today? Tell us in the chat. We're happy
Just
to see
kidding.
you all.
I can't see
Just
anything.
kidding.
Can you
Oh,
guys see us
no.
on the
Technical
Just
difficulties. No, I don't see
hey, we
nothing.
have a recent follower, Mav5519. That's cool.
Hey, thanks, Mav, even though you can't see us. Thanks for following us.
um uh
This is
um
because we keep it real. Like, there's no phony, no cooking show stuff here. This is live. We're watching O'Grady fix things as we speak.
does it even show us as live? Yeah.
I can see it
So it
up
does.
on
No,
If
they
we
would
are
just
on,
have
just with
three black boxes.
Okay, just making sure. So that part's not broken.
I mean, I hear
Okay.
us.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I can fix this. So something happened with my screen capture, I guess.
So if you're listening live,
How about
welcome
now?
to Ready Set Data, the audio show.
There we
Hey,
are.
There we are.
There we are. Okay. I don't know.
We now have video.
Blame OBS.
So if you're listening on the
I guess.
radio, we'll come back over to Twitch. Check it out.
Yes. Can now see our wonderful faces again.
I'm so sorry, everybody. I'm so
I
sorry.
apologize. Yes.
So let's
So how are
do
you
this
guys
again.
going? Yeah.
Yeah, how are you guys going? I'm doing good. It's been a long week as usual. We're in a hiring phase. We're growing. So
Good. Good.
yeah, I need to mute the tab. There we go. Now I don't hear an echo. But yeah, we're hiring. So talking to a lot of people. We've got a few people in the final lap, let's say. So I'm looking forward to onboarding them. It's gonna be really busy training everybody. How you guys doing? How's work?
Man, work's going pretty crazy. We have some challenges we're doing right now for potential like bonus options. So we're doing like a estimation challenge, I guess you can call it. So as long as we can estimate properly and get a project done in a properly forecasted time, then we get a bonus. So that being said, obviously everyone's working later than normal to make sure it gets done.
That's one way to do it. Yeah.
We're like, what are the metrics again? Oh, okay. We gotcha. Just get it done. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It will happen.
It's yeah. That would be a good topic actually. The whole I don't know what the name of the rule is. Whatever they measure, like determines what people do, like and how it can backfire.
The photon slit rule.
Is that what it's called?
You know, where you can't measure and see it. And if you measure it, it affects the outcome of what you see.
Sounds like some quantum
theory. Yeah, I've heard about
stuff.
that.
Yeah, when you have photons, because they travel in both waves and as particles, so they can, depending on how wide the slits are apart, they actually. You're not listening, Anthony. Shut up.
What?
We'll have to look it up, but it's yeah, it has to do with like they travel as both particles and waves.
Yeah,
but
so
if you observe them,
when those slits are wider, the light shines through as you expect, like a flashlight to work, like how we normally expect it, right?
As a wave, actually.
And then when you get really small, they're waves and they interact with each other, and then they can cancel each other out. So you end up with a whole bunch of
lines.
Slits, yeah.
Yeah. I think
cool.
Part of that isn't part of that where observation changes the outcome.
Yeah, you thinking like Schrodinger's cat, quantum theory, wave collapse.
It's a long time since I've thought outside of IT. You know,
it's the observer's effect, which we all know is true in IT from the perspective of monitoring.
There we go.
It's also true, like they only talk about in quantum theory, but when someone's watching someone in IT work, they type slower. They no longer know how to spell. We don't know where anything is. We're all the new guy when someone's behind us. It doesn't matter. It's like universal, right?
Yeah, I finally started to get better in our mobbing type sessions that I told you about, because we're always with people that are watching, even if it's just one or two developers. Yeah, but we don't do cameras if it's just developers, because we're looking at code anyway, so who cares?
Yeah.
But I finally started getting better at comfortably typing in front of another person, and it's very difficult to spell in general. Just leave it at that.
It's difficult to spell. I mean,
Difficult to spell.
not all of us are English majors. They exist in IT.
They do.
I've already
They're
proposed
managers.
that. I've already proposed that most managers, not most, I shouldn't say most. I feel like a higher amount than would be than you'd expect of IT professionals have
Mhm.
degrees have nothing to do with IT,
Oh,
like
yeah.
electrical engineering. Or I just found out today, someone else, I was in the conversation, nothing to do with it, that someone I work with got their major in criminal something. You know, I found the terminology.
Like
Like,
criminal science or something.
yeah, they're gonna be like, they're like, you know, I'm completely slaughtering it. Basically, they want to be a CSI, right? That's not accurate, but that's supposed to sound like
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I get it. Yeah.
So I was
One of
like,
those type
that's
of
really
roles.
cool.
Yes.
Yeah. And then they ended up in IT, like one does.
Yeah.
Podcast I listen to, talks about all the time. He had like, I think it was like literature or something, like American literature was his major or something. You know,
Mhm.
it's interesting. And now he's running a company in IT. So
Oh yeah. I mean,
now
he
that
might have
we've
been doing forensics or going into that type of work, and I mean, like, actually, all I like is the cool computer type stuff that they use. And then like, well, IT it is.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
You want
Yeah.
to catch criminals, you know, working for the NSA. Next thing you know, yeah.
Yeah,
His
that
name's not-
makes sense. Having coworkers that are majors, English majors, that when you're in publishing, that's fair.
Yeah. So now that we've covered the
It's like IT of publishing, so it's like,
we talked about quantum physics, you know, the quantum physics action show, and then we moved on to like talking about degrees. It's about that time where we say, "Welcome to the show, derailed as usual. This is Ready Set Data." We have O'Grady, software engineer. We have Lee Markham, database administrator. We have me, Anthony Fortner, rambler extraordinaire, or data engineer if you like. And today we're talking about continuous delivery. So this should be exciting. Now, do you guys use continuous delivery where you work? Do you deal with it at all now? I know you've probably technically dealt with it in the past.
yeah, we actually, Lee, I'll let you answer that one because I'm gonna have to type something real fast.
Shaking his head no.
I mean, it might just be a no.
I don't have anything like that at my current job. I would like us to, but we don't. So far as I know, there's a particular product I work with pretty regularly that they've talked about it a lot, but never pulled the trigger. So yeah, not right now.
So when you say continuous delivery, for me, that's deployments. Is that similar in the way you're discussing this? Like delivery as in deployment, or delivery as in an end product of an application?
Yeah. So from what you're thinking of deployment, it's very similar. There's actually two different terms: continuous delivery and continuous deployment. Delivery is getting the product, in this case, an application, maybe it could be a database as well, ready to be deployed. And continuous delivery means instead of someone actually pushing the button to deploy it, it happens automatically.
Automated
Right.
deploys. Okay.
Yeah, it's like an automatic deploy. So
Yep.
basically, continuous delivery is a software development practice that uses automation to speed up the release of new code. It establishes a process which a developer's changes to an application can be pushed to a repository container registry through automation. So previously we talked about source control. This has been like a bit of a series. That's a prerequisite, right? Everyone has to have the code. Bring down the same code. Everyone starts from the same place, make the changes. They commit the code back up. And then that continuous integration it brings it all together. And there's a whole series of tests. That should be automated, right? And then that's continuous integration. We talked about that in the last show. So if continuous integration, series of tests happen, we make sure it builds, so on and so forth. The next step is the continuous delivery. So now that it's passed a bunch of tests, we make it available, right? And so the difference between that and continuous deployments is, like I just mentioned, we make it available, but in some instances, if you really have rigorous tests and you've built up that trust, you can have it deploy automatically without anyone pushing the button, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in fact, for example, in my environment, we have it set up where for the databases, when people commit the code, it gets built right away and deployed, continuously gets deployed immediately to a build server. Now, it sounds strange because we're not actually building anything on there. That's just kind of following the nomenclature that app dev would use when they talk about their applications. When
Yeah.
they deploy, they have a build server that does all the building, right? And we do that so that way the SQL code can sit there and be tested against. They do not have continuous deployments. I gotta make sure I say the right thing. And application development, right? So when they
Okay,
do
yeah.
their stuff, it gets built, but stops there. Someone has to push a button. Oh no, actually never. I take that back. They go to dev automatically too. You got to
Okay,
push a
yeah.
button, go to QA, push a button, go to prod.
Yeah.
Um,
And some of those are in
on
place for safety checks, not just or at least in my company. We have some stuff where we don't want to fully automate, when you push something straight to prod. It still has to be some kind of safety check saying I want this to go to prod. And from there on out it can be automated. Yeah, ours are automated. But when it comes to, let's see, and I'm trying to remember how we had it set up when we worked together and how we have it set up now, and it's pretty similar as far as you check something in, it deploys to dev, or you check something in, you can deploy from dev to UAT or QA,
whatever
I
the
think
environments are.
Yeah.
Usually environments, they tend to be this like a row. You go from here to here to here to here, and there can be timers. There could be, like I said, tests. In some cases, it fans out. So like instead of deploying one, you deploy to many.
Yeah.
And then one or more of those might go out, right? And that depends on a lot of different situations.
Yeah, like how many servers you have. A lot of times there's redundancy servers for our backup servers.
Yeah, some people have
that's how we have it.
blue-green deployment models where they deploy to. There's two machines that effectively prod. They deploy to one, and then when everything's good, they switch, right? And
That's
then
how ours are.
Okay,
Blue green.
that's awesome. Yeah, so in my environment is just a prod, right? Now that's completely true with databases. We have availability groups, so
Yeah.
in a way you could say we're deploying to several machines because we are deploying to all the nodes, but kind of sidestep that.
Yeah, but in an availability group, I think you got me thinking about the whole switching thing. And I was like, yeah, it's going to work real well in databases because if you're replicating anything, you can't really change the secondary. But
yeah, with ours,
anyway.
it's just to keep one server, or to make sure there's always an active server, so we never have any downtime. So we do a deploy to one, it gets updated, everything gets moved to that. Then we can go to the other one, so we don't have any or minimize downtime. We'll say.
Yeah. So with applications, it's easy, right? You effectively have two app machines. One goes away and one's there, right? Well, it doesn't go away. You're no longer pointing at it.
Yeah.
But what Lee's saying is with availability groups, you've got a primary and several secondary nodes. And if you want to do the whole blue-green thing, you'd almost have to have a second stack. And that doesn't really make sense because unlike with apps, you have state. And I don't know. I'd be willing to have a discussion with somebody who disagrees with me because that would be super interesting. But I think I definitely agree with Lee on this. We really wouldn't do it the blue-green with ability groups and prod. I can make arguments for QA where you're like, hey, we're gonna set this other one up. It's everything good. Take this one away because
you don't have active
you're not
data
dealing
coming
with
in.
Real data. Yeah, you're just QA testing. But even then, I don't know if it really matches well. Bring it.
So the challenge there is the synchronization of the states of data. So if I have a primary over here and I have a secondary here, the data is traveling. All data changes are going from the primary to the secondary. And usually the secondary can't be changed. Well, certainly in an availability group, you can't change the secondary. SQL Server will not allow that. But like if you were doing log shipping or anything like that, you still have a situation where you couldn't change the secondary. Replication, you could change the secondary, but then you would break the replication process between this, and your DBA would not be happy with you. So also don't do that.
That's fair. That's fair.
So if you were going
Yeah.
to do this in a database, you basically have to not think of it that way. Right? You'd have your primary and the data's flowing through the secondaries, and then you'd have
Yes.
another primary and its data's flowing through the secondaries. And then they're both just sitting there, and one of them the applications are pointing to, and then the connection strings or through DNS black magic, you're suddenly pointing at the other one. And so both of those have the flow going in the same place. But now the data is different on the two different machines.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a whole hairball. I'm all for treating databases like they're apps in certain situations. Like I like using the methodology in both, but this is definitely an example where, at least right now, I can't comprehend a way you can do the blue-green situation on fraud.
Yeah,
Right.
because even in a distributed availability group scenario where you have like a primary and a secondary, and then you have another set of primary and secondary, you still don't really have that because the first primary is treating the other primary as a secondary. It's
They're all
hopping
tied
the
together.
information.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not
No matter
really
what-
two primaries.
And no matter what you put in that high availability setup, if you did blue-green with the database, I feel like you'd have to just copy pasta that over here, right? Like inside of there, that's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see how it's gonna work.
So
Way
you could do
too much data.
that. So you could do that on AWS. So and maybe in Azure as well, because we were just talking about this actually. So they have a feature called FSX. AWS, Amazon Web Services, has a feature called FSX. And it's basically a way to do shared storage that they replicate to another availability zone. So you could yeah, you still can. Yeah, I'm not sure you could do it. To finish my thought, if the storage is being replicated, you then could stand up another machine in the other zone and then attach the storage to it. But you're still not really doing what you're talking about, where you're changing one and then switching to it. You're still changing the primary. Anyway, sorry, rambling, derailed, but it
Hey,
relates.
That's what we do. It's what we do. We
Yep.
we hear a problem and we're like, let's solve it, right? And I just don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm like
I would
Vanilla
love to hear it.
Ice, you know.
I'll solve it, or we'll tell you, no, we can't. And that's a hard problem. I don't know that you would do that in fraud, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I wasn't looking for that. I'll get on blue green. Oh, I think we're talking about different scenarios. Okay, so like I know. So in one of the CI/CD pipelines we have one where it goes on commit. It'll continuously deploy to dev. So dev basically goes down, and then first the build and test happen, right? A big part of this, keep in mind, you have to have testing in place to make sure it's okay.
Yeah.
Then it comes up, then it takes dev down so it can deploy what you have, whether that's app or database, basically the same thing. And then after that, you should have more testing. You should use smoke tests because all the things that should be true when this is deployed, can I connect to the database? Can I do this? Can I do that?
So smoke,
then-
real quick, smoke test was something you mentioned a couple times throughout this series. I don't know if you
Yeah.
explained what you mean by that.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I've written smoke tests with you, but for chat, can you explain, what you would consider smoke test and how just a typical one would run out, just so we have a baseline.
Okay.
It's when you
Yeah, no,
don't inhale.
Ha ha ha. All right, and we have Clinton here.
Sorry.
So, yeah. So first, I'll tell you in like story form, right? You're building machine. you're wiring everything together, you're hooking it all up, you plug it in, and before you would give it to somebody, you just kind of plug it in, and push some buttons, and see if anything catches on fire.
Mhm.
You check and you smell for smoke, right? So that's a very simple test. If you smell smoke, something's wrong. You don't have to do anything complicated to find out, right? And that's kind of the analogy we're doing here. Smoke tests are very simple tests that you would do that are very quick, don't need special logic, doesn't really have much to do with the programming at all, like what kind of features you built, just making sure things are there, right? Super lightweight. So, for example, when the app's up, if depending on how the app's put together, it may have a configuration file, some along those lines of connection strings. So you can just loop through all those connections and say, can I connect to those things? So,
Yep.
and to bring it to data, this app talks to these 4 SQL servers, right? Or Oracle servers, or whatever. These 4 databases. All right. Have the app connect to those 4 real quick. Can I? No. Oh, you can't connect to the 4th one. Smoke test failed, right? So yeah, smoke test is just was real simple, checking things work. You do it automatically out of reflex.
Mhm.
A lot of times when you do a manual deployment. So go back to the good old days, O'Grady, and you go and you deploy, let's say it's a Java app, right? You go and you
Drop
you
the
do
war file.
Tomcat or whatever. Yeah, drop the war file. And then what do? You go to the URL and go, oh, it's not up yet. It's not up yet. And it's up. Okay. Click, 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 click. Looks good.
Yeah.
That's a smoke test.
Mhm.
That's layman terms what a smoke test is, right? Although we want to do that programmatically. We don't want to have a
Yep.
person who does that all the time. So from an automated fashion, we do that. Those also become important if we're doing a database deployment too. So like I just said, if that app goes, hey, I can't connect to my dev environment, my dev database, you wanted to say something. And it's an easy check. It's just, can I connect to it, right? That happens all the time. And if you do that on a regular basis, like let's say every 15 minutes, you can say that's a health check, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
like a hardcore smoke checks we did whenever we switched those servers over. And I was sitting there on all the applications. Like, does this application still connect? Does this application still connect?
Yep.
And if we had health checks and smoke checks in
Oh, it
place
would have
back
been.
then,
Yeah.
we would just turn everything on and then it would see what screened, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we've
red.
if we've talked about. Have we talked about test-driven development? Or I think we mentioned we're going to.
It.
So eventually
Yeah,
we will get to that. But that's essentially
Maybe.
writing the tests first. You write a failing test, then you write the code to make that test pass. Then you check it in, or you can check in whenever. But
that's a real concise way to put it. That's 100%
yeah.
correct.
So that way, when those are
sounds-
written for us, I can turn my app on as soon as I run it, and I see 25 green check marks. Like, all right, it's all running. Everything's connected.
So,
That's exactly what
something?
my wife does as a QA engineer. She
Oh, yeah?
creates tests
Excuse
to make sure that what the developers write actually works and gives it a pass or a fail. So
Is your
yeah, I
wife
mean that
looking
could
for
be
a
a whole
job?
job in and of itself, but a lot of times
So-
developers end up doing that part too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's two
gonna
different
say,
schools of thought.
I was gonna say, is Miss Markham looking for a job? We need a QA engineer. Currently hiring for one. But continue. Sorry.
Good information.
All right. So it's happening live, people. This is how things happen.
That works. It's a very
So-
difficult job to fill, by the way. I don't know, Anthony, if you're hiring for any QA engineers right now, but man, it's a hard job to fill. There's a lot of very QA type knowledge that people look for. So
yeah. And it takes a special mindset, right?
Yeah.
So no, in the environment I work in, the powers that be feel like QA is everyone's job, and for better or worse, people disagree with that. But that's our setup. So we don't have someone who's specifically QA.
Mhm.
We do have a QA environment, but product owners and then the stakeholders in the project use that to do the tests or whatever.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you, Lee. Do you know if those QA tests are automated or is it all manual?
They are automated tests, so they write code to execute the test and give it a pass or a fail.
So when you have automated QA tests like that, uh, yeah. So we'll skip ahead for a second, but like I was talking about dev, when it gets to QA, all those tests that are run by your QA engineers, those should kick off, right? Those should be kicking off and be tested and make sure they all that works out. Or if you wanted to, one of the big things about one of the big principles of DevOps is to move the pane farther to, some say forward, some say to the left, but basically get it to as close to that as possible.
Mhm.
I would argue that if I had QA engineers writing those, I'd bring those over to dev. So I knew as soon as I made a change and I committed it, it's like, hey, this is gonna fail in QA.
Oh yeah.
Why
Yeah.
wait? Why wait?
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So
Yeah, the QA I feel like should be a part of the team along the whole process. You know, as soon as you're putting something into QA, or as soon as you are in something as the in dev, you're showing them, you're explaining what it's going to do in QA or what it should do once it hits a QA environment, and then they can write the tests. A lot of times, like Anthony, you said, devs write the tests. That's our current state as well. While we try to find another QA. But yeah, I've seen both ways, and both ways honestly work. Just one's a little more stressful for the dev.
right. Then so does the QA Brady in your environment, does the QA engineer work like on one team? Like your team
Yeah.
has a QA engineer? Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, every team has at least 4 devs, a software engineering manager who's also a dev. It's kind of like a team lead, and then a QA, and then a PO. Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, we have like 40 teams too, so it's a little more scaled out at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice when we had one. So once we get another one, it'll be nice again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So,
like Don
okay,
said,
so
having access to the code, that's huge. If they can look at the code and be like, oh, here's what's going on, yeah, much better than just having someone doing, user testing.
yeah, you want stuff to be as automated as possible. You don't just have to have someone just click, click, click. They should be able to click, 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 and then figure out how to automate that. So that way it can happen every time. So yeah, so that was so smoke testing. It's real quick tests. Soon as the item gets deployed, whether it's an app or database, smoke testing can kick off. We definitely have smoke tests and integration tests firing off on in-app dev. We're still getting there on the databases, right? On the BI server, we're a little bit better getting those integration tests and smoke tests, but we haven't really done that with our application databases just yet. It takes a village. Integration tests. So we talked about that in previous ones, and we kind of just touched on it with the test-driven development. Integration tests are a little more complicated. When you add a new feature, you should be creating integration test. Unit tests. I'm sorry, that's the wrong word. You should create unit tests.
Yeah, unit tests are within the application. Integration is how it acts with any other applications.
100%. That's not bad. So unit tests. Whenever you add a new feature, you should make unit tests in your code. As you mentioned, if you do test-driven development, you can do the unit tests first, and then you write your code to make them pass. What's great about those is upon deployment, in my situation, upon deployment to dev, before it even gets deployed, before it even gets delivered, you run those unit tests.
Oh yeah.
Then it's on the machine. Then you do the smoke tests, and then you can do the integration tests. And the integration tests you could have on a cycle too. You have those run every 15 minutes, just to make sure that what's supposed to be happening is happening. And the whole point of this is to get to where the first word of both of these is continuous, right? To get to the point where you can get trust. So you trust to go to dev because people's code will, if they're putting up bad code, it'll get caught.
Yeah.
If the integration test fails, you can even have it automatically go back, which is great. Wish we had that in databases, Lee. someone puts
Mess
that code
just
out,
go
Nice.
it just says, no, go back.
Yeah.
Um,
Just hit the go back button. You guys don't have a go
Undo.
back button?
so it's just, you just put up your resume and get a new job,
Yeah.
right? That's
It's
Control-
called restore from backup.
No, it's Control
Yes.
Z. Control Z. It always goes backwards. It's fine.
Control Z. I wish we had that in databases. That would
It's a lot.
be amazing. But
the
it's
keystrokes are longer, right?
yeah. I mean, it's the whole challenge of the database isn't a static config file. It's changing fairly regularly depending on how busy your system is, and you have to be able to capture the state at the moment you want to go back to. And that's what we call restoring the database. I mean, there's
Yeah.
no way around that, really.
And I have a solution. I have a way that I believe will give us that, but I don't have faith that people will do it, right? And that solution is when you, and then we're talking about the database here and now talking about apps, but when you commit a migration script that says add this column or do this work, right? Make these new tables, whatever, and it moves data around. You also commit the undo script for that, right? The rollback script. And then you have your process when it deploys, before it deploys to dev, deploy, do your tests. Everything passes, do that deploy script. If that passes, do the rollback script. Does all the things still pass? And then you've tested your deploy and your rollback. And then on the actual dev machine, once it gets past that point, deploy to dev. And you do that in all the environments. So that way, when it goes to prod, if there's a problem, it runs that rollback right away. Both of those scripts are marked as already ran, and then they can never get ran again. So so someone will have to fix it before it'll happen again. Still,
But that
you still
requires
always
everyone to do those steps properly.
Yeah, and
I
selling
wish you
that,
luck,
like
my friend.
some deployment scripts are very complicated, and
Mhm.
telling a developer that they have to write SQL code to change states and write code to make it go back perfectly, which
Mhm.
what we're asking, right?
It's hard enough to write one
hard.
that freaking works, and then also make sure it goes back if it doesn't. I'm like, oof.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, that's not always trivial. That's not always trivial.
Yeah.
It's not, because some deployment scripts, if you're changing the definition of a table, for example,
Mhm.
makes changes that aren't always very easy to roll back. I mean, you've moved data around, maybe between more than one table, several
Mhm.
tables, and moving that all back and putting it back to the way it was is kind of challenging. So I agree. Yeah, so I've worked at a place that had deployment and rollback scripts, so that if something went wrong, you were supposed to have a rollback script to undo whatever it was that you just deployed that came from developers. But it takes some persuading, as you were alluding to, Anthony, to get to that point. And, perhaps some of the persuasion is, I could think of one way to persuade or encourage is, you have the person who actually has to fix it come
Yeah.
in and say, when your code does this and it doesn't do it perfectly, here's what I get to do after the fact. And here's how long
Yeah.
it takes to do that rollback or that process to put everything back the way it used to be. And here's a way that you could build a rollback script so that it's ready, and whoever has to fix it doesn't have to figure out how to fix it on the fly.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, maybe that's a good middle ground. Like, make sure it's a very well documented thing that you're doing, so that the person that does have to fix it, at least they have an idea of what they're looking at. So, what's up,
Yeah.
Cave? We are talking about continuous delivery. Damn it.
I mean, we're basically talking about both, right? We're talking about continuous
I'm talking
delivery.
about continuous delivery. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's a lot of this stuff brought up is very similar to how I've seen things done and how we currently do it, and it's I don't deal with the data side anymore, so I don't know what their strategies are over in the DBA world. But I mean,
Yeah.
maybe I should ask them.
Continuous integration and continuously, I would love to know if they're okay
Yeah.
talking about it. Yeah, continuous integration and continuous deployment. I don't feel like it's everywhere in the database world. There's places that do it. I follow a person or two who talk about it. You know, I think it's the bread and butter. But I don't think it's a lot of places. It has some very unique challenges, and you know, like if a lot of departments are more about the apps, and the database people are kind of necessary evil. Hopefully, I'm wrong, but there's a lot of places that are like that, and so they don't want that pain. They're just like, this is the DBA's problem.
Yeah.
You know, like if I wanted to be cynical, I could have responded to what Lee said. You know, show them how painful it is, and like, I kind of wonder how many developers are like, well, that's why I'm not a DBA. That sucks.
Right.
All right.
That's why we do stuff on prod. We don't want to talk to you.
Oh my gosh. Stay away from prod, man. Yeah, so there's pains. We got through a lot of them. There's still some pains we're working through, but I'm a big fan. Like I think I told a story last call. We have most of our databases that are heavily used. Well, I shouldn't say heavily used, are heavily changed by developers. Like, you know, we're making changes to a very live database.
Right.
Most of them are in a pipeline now, right? We don't have continuous deployments on all of them. We have continuous deployments on a few of the environments on some of them, but the one that doesn't have the pipeline running the way it should is the one that I told that story last time. Deployment happened, and there was a lot of pain, and then, well, oh my gosh, it's not working now, and they're actively trying to fix code or redo things to do it. And I'm like, we don't have to do this with the pipelines, because this would have exploded on dev.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan. I think it was worth the effort. I think it was a big value add. The developers agree. Once they get used to it, we get a new developer who's never worked in an environment with that. There's a curve, but then once they've worked it for a while, like, when's the last time push to prod was hard? I'll rephrase. In SQL. There hasn't been one. Yeah, it's been a lot easier. So yeah. Anyway, so I guess I'm telling stories now. Yeah. So in my scenario, we've automatically continuously deployed to dev. All the tests are fired off. Everything's hunky dory. In theory, well, no, we'll start with, well, for sure. For sure, continuous delivery means that can be queued up and ready for QA.
Okay. Yeah.
Or, you know, UAT and all these other, just whatever your environments are.
Whatever the next
And then someone
environment is.
yeah. And then now people know they can push that button. And if it failed anything, it would just say no, it won't queue up for QA, right? If you did practice continuous deployment, you could either deploy to QA now, because you know it's good to go, or schedule that deployment. So it's automatically going to happen. So I do have a database that does this in my environment. Every week, whatever the last good passes all the tests deployment was to dev, will automatically push to QA. So QA is now always staying nice and fresh, right?
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, we have the schedule. We do the schedule thing the dev actually too. A lot of times we'll build it in one environment. It goes to dev in the mornings, goes to QA on Mondays. There's been conversations
that's a
about
lot better than
going to prod.
Than when we were all there, especially whenever we started there. The dev and QA environments compared to what you've gotten into now, sounds like a lot better. So that's good.
I get better every day, right? So yeah, we've talked about having one or two of them set for continuous deployment to prod, but haven't quite got buy-in to that, right? Continuous deployment, because sometimes you have to schedule things to deploy at the same time, right? Yeah. And so until we want to solve that problem, we're just not. So yeah. Yeah.
And you also keep health checks as well. I know that on a lot of the applications, and we do the similar a graphical representation of health checks on all the applications. Do you guys do any of that kind of stuff in DBA or in the database world?
So the only health checks we have right now, as far as dashboards, all the health checks the app dev does to check on it. Now, at DBAs have monitoring tools they use, right? But I almost feel like it's two different categories, right? There's like the stuff that a DBA will check on. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of the same thing, right? Like you can talk about how you do things. We'll get emails when things break. So
Yeah,
I guess we still do. So yeah, we get emails when things are messed up. So maybe it is kind of the same thing, just kind of
less
colored
graphical,
differently.
maybe. Yeah,
Yeah.
less exciting looking.
Well, what do you got, Lee?
Yeah. Well, so some monitoring tools will check a number, let's say 50 things. I'm just going to make up a number. And they'll have I'm going to say 51, and it'll be apparent why in a minute. So let's say you have, low, medium, and high severity issues. So in each category are 17 things.
Okay.
And then you have a composite score for health of whatever it is, that it's an overall health score for whatever those 51 things check, based on however many of them fail within each category, kind of thing. So I see that kind of a dashboard with a number on it in some monitoring systems. That
Okay.
that's not the same. Like, I don't
Yeah, it feels different, doesn't it?
really use that. Maybe I could or should, but I'm more interested in real-time break fix things, like this important job just failed,
Yeah.
or your CPU has been at 100% for the last 10 minutes, or
Or you're out of
that
disk
kind of
space.
stuff. Yeah.
Someone's running a query that usually takes 30 seconds, but now it's taking 10 minutes.
Or like an
Yeah.
hour or 3 days.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's your queries, Brady. That's your queries.
Yes, that's.
uh,
I think
Yeah,
I was
so, like,
considered responsible for those. Yes.
we've all done it. We've all done it.
Sure.
Where did I put that word clause? So yeah, I feel like there's a difference in dashboarding. I think a lot of this is going to sound like a very duh statement. It's going to seem very obvious, but brace yourself. A lot of DBA dashboards and DBA monitoring tools are made for DBAs. Duh.
Yeah, and a lot of development
DBA
ones are made for the management.
developers. Oh, there you go. Yeah. So
Tell me I'm wrong.
Lee just said, and then yes, I agree with you. Like what Lee just said, he's like, I'm more interested in knowing like from operational label, where's the pain at, right?
Yeah.
He's like, I don't want to know
Yeah.
that like this database is 99% healthy, but this one's 98% healthy. That's not useful. Like he wants to
tell me
know.
when it needs
Tell me if I'm wrong.
something to
What-
happen.
yeah. This is a problem.
Mhm.
Yo, dog, CPU's been spiked for too long. Yo, dog, this job failed. Yo,
Yeah.
dog, whatever. Right? That's how it is.
And you said you get
those-
emails, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. I don't know what he said. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're set up for emails on any kind of major issues, like servers going down, or if there are servers, or an application failing, whatever. We don't honestly ever look at dashboards as much as a developer, but I know people look at the
You're
dashboards.
not operational. You're just pump out the features kind of team, right? You're not really operational unless it's like an all hands on deck. Oh yeah, break it down.
No, we are now. Yeah, we are now. So it depends on. We've been switched around a little bit since we've been there, but in general, we're now going to be focused on. I would consider it 3 apps, maybe. It's kind of all one application because it's all having to do with phone systems and things that I'm working on. But all the different parts of it, I would say like 3 main parts that we're going to be responsible for, and we're just building it from the ground up now. So currently, they're looking for the product. That's the first step. and then we will also be charged with maintaining it. So, but so I guess that'd be considered operational at that point. We'll
I
be
got
putting
you.
out,
That makes sense.
but then
Yeah.
we'll be putting out features to that product or adjoining products that may utilize the APIs and stuff that we wrote. You know.
So
And
I
here
got
again,
oh, go on.
I feel like we have
Timing.
a difference between building something that's finished and measuring the current state of something that happens to be running somewhere. Your app, you make changes, you deploy changes to config files or code or whatever outside of the database.
Mhm.
And what I care about is what happens to my real-time graphs after that. Is there more or less blocking? Is there more or less CPU usage?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, if I put something out there, then all of a sudden CPU usage is through the roof, they'd be like, oh, well, maybe, maybe it's what you just
And
deployed.
we've seen that. We've
Yeah.
seen what
Sure.
should have been simple changes out in the wild behave very differently. I mean, that's
yeah.
that's the definition of a bug, kind of, isn't it?
I
So,
mean, the
yeah,
long running joke of it worked on my PC.
which you might be see.
Like-
That's one of the things to bring it back. That's one of the things that CI/CD is supposed to get rid of, right?
Oh yeah,
You can't use that excuse anymore because as soon as you commit, it's on
on the
a repeatable
yes.
deployment and testing scenario, right?
Yeah, ours goes
uh,
to
here-
servers
Here,
that are built
Yes.
and ran, and yeah. Go ahead, Lee. Sorry.
where are you going with that? Talk more about servers that are built.
With me? Oh,
Where,
ours is like I was saying the other day. We have DevLab. It's a each time we build our own little instance of the application server, and
Mhm.
everything has to pass on that, and it goes out. So it's a lot more safer, I think, route. And like Anthony said, it leads to not having the option of saying works on my PC because we're all using the same build servers. You know.
right? But you use an adjective right there. You said we deploy it to this little app server and we test it. Is that app server the same hardware and specs as production?
I believe so. I'd have to double check, but I'm pretty sure that it's literally spinning up something that you can, like a mirror of what you will be. Mirror. Sorry.
Here, where?
Mirror.
Cool. So I thought you were going. The reason I wanted to hear more about your thought is I thought you were going to talk about the idea that I just had, which is things work on my PC just fine, and they might work on dev just fine, and they might blow up in prod because dev has 4 cores and 16 gigs of RAM,
Mm-hmm.
and prod has 32 cores and a terabyte of RAM, and that makes a difference.
Yep.
Yeah, and the SQL Server world, or I mean, probably the database world in general. You're whatever your engine of choice is might come up with a different plan, right?
You also have to
Yeah.
remember, I'm hitting all APIs. I'm not doing SQL calls anymore. Like this, we're not doing. Let me go get this data
Sure.
from the database at this point. We're saying, hey, I need this data that lives in this API. I'm gonna go get it. Or hey, I need this. That person has an API for that. I'm gonna go get it. So we don't. When we write, even when we write APIs, I guess they're pointing to other APIs. But it's it's a very, for us at least, a more hands-off approach to databases than I'm used to, and it's kind of nice because it's less to mess up. So
Sure.
you know.
Specializing has its benefits.
Yeah, so Dunce,
Yeah.
eventually there is API that we hit that grabs it that some team wrote. But I think a lot of it is, and I may be partially incorrect on this, but I know a lot of it is once data's starting to be saved somewhere, they make an API if you need to get it. Like, instead of saying, "Hey, make a SQL call." They're just, here's your API. If you want to get this data, hit this API.
all the API.
Yeah.
So we almost touched on something a second ago. Lee did. I wasn't sure if he's gonna go that route or not, but I will. So there's a
Okay.
difference between dev and prod and QA, UAT, and all the other things. Sandbox. It isn't just the cores. So with apps, the whole app gets wiped away and a new one gets put in its place. Starts at zero, you turn it on, and it starts doing its things. It starts following its instructions, right? But with databases, it's not like that. With databases, what data you have in your tables determines how things are going to go, right? And so if you're on dev and you have 32 widgets that the item in your database that your queries care about is widgets. Those
Yep.
widgets have like a couple facts about them. There's not that much data turnover. And so the plans are going to be maybe simpler, right? But then you go to prod where you have 30 years of data and there's been widgets that don't exist anymore, tons of different things. We used to use a different code for colors. Now it's a different code for colors. Everything's completely different. And so you go there, and then what you ask the database to do is fundamentally different, right? So, so that's another problem. And that's why, and I believe last time we met up last Thursday, we started to ask about this. Like, how do you deal with the fact that the state of the database really, really matters? The data is different. And how I know we handle that in our environment is, other than prod, in all the other environments, step one is we blow away the database in question and we restore it with a copy of prod. I've had people ask me not to do this because there's reasons like, why have my test data in there? Or it takes more than 12 seconds. There's
That's a
other
big
such complaints.
thing.
Yeah. And then I no, because it won't work, right? Like we won't get the benefits if we do that. Also, I've had people ask like, well, for this reason or that reason, can we just go from the last full, right? Hypothetically, a handful of days ago, you did a full backup. Can we just restore that? Because it'd be so much faster, right? Well, no, because then you have to testing against what happened yesterday. And sometimes what happened yesterday is really important, right? I'll give a real life, for instance. Within an hour of someone making a hot fix, a hot change on prod, i.e., support team found a problem, they figured out a plan to fix it. Support team goes, "This look good, everybody." We'll look at it. Yeah, it's good. Go, go, go. They put the hot fix out. It makes things better, right? The hot fix is incompatible with code that dev made. So, for example, let's make this with us. Like, I complain that something's messed up. Lee and his team looks at it in the database and goes, "I see the problem. I know how to fix it."
Mm-hmm.
He goes through his whole process, and then this is impacting a lot of people. So everyone gives a thumbs up, and Lee pushes the button, deploys the prod, right? Yay! Everyone's happy. People start to go home, whatever. Now Grady and his team have been working on code. They want to go out because in this hypothetical situation, they're practicing a really good tight CI/CD, continuous delivery, continuous deployment.
We do that after every database change, by the way. Every major database change, especially hot fixes.
So yeah, we do that every time you commit code. In my hypothetical situation, O'Grady, you go and you commit your code, it knows up at the worst case scenario what the database on prod looked like 15 minutes ago. So the next build within an hour in this real life scenario, if I'm copying that, you go, my code doesn't work anymore. Why? Because Lee fixed the problem on prod and it broke your code. Right now, you're not going to wait until you push to QA or you push to prod to find that out. And that's one of the big reasons why. No, it's up to date in an order of minutes.
Yeah. I think this gets harder and harder as databases get larger, though. And we face this challenge where we were at. And I'm working with databases now that, no kidding, are 4 or 5 times the size of the ones that we were working with at Hunter. So you can't, I mean, that presents a challenge. 500 gigs is so much easier to restore than 2.5 terabytes. So I haven't quite decided or figured out a way to like address that. I have a theory
I want to hear your
about
theory.
something that I could do.
I want to hear your theory, and I got something too.
Let's hear it.
So, um, my theory is that you could, so for larger databases, you could break them into file groups with individual files, and you could, in theory, restore individual files. So if you knew, for example, that I don't know, if you had it broken into like apps, so app 1 is this file group, app 2 is over here, app 3 is this, you could restore individual file groups or sets of file groups and do that a lot faster than obviously restoring the entire database all at one time. That's my first idea about how I would achieve that. So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
The problem you're trying to solve is to limit the downtime during the restore. Is that what you're trying
Yeah.
to solve? So what we're prototyping now is the ability to hot swap databases. So you have a database, for Widgetco, and let's say it's 5 tetrabytes. It takes forever, terabytes, whatever. Words are hard. And it takes way too long, and you don't want the downtime on dev, you don't want downtime on QA, so on and so forth. So what you do is when someone commits and it builds and restores and processes, you do that, and the database, when the database is good and happy, it's sitting there and it has the wrong name, or whatever. It's built and ready. And then you take the other one, this is kind of that blue-green scenario we're talking about. You take that other one and you go boop, and switch it over. So, for example, on dev, they're working. There's a moment where the database to connect goes away, and the other one just becomes available. And there may be a blip there, but it's gonna be a short blip.
Yeah.
And if we're talking about a situation where you have availability groups, and again, we're not talking about prod here, so remember that. You'd have to take the availability group down. If you become one node, then you do the switch, and then you build it back up. It'd still be much shorter than doing the whole restore. Plus, with the added bonus, if something goes wrong with the restore, you don't do the flip. And the developers never know there's a problem unless they should be involved.
Right. So here's another challenge that you don't have currently. When you restore an entire copy of a database that, let's say, is 2 terabytes, and it's already 2 terabytes on dev, now you have to have 4 terabytes plus room so that your disk alerts don't go off, and you're in the cloud. Now you're spending lots of money to restore an entire database. So
spending money like a rapper's girlfriend. Yep.
So, and you're told, no, you can't restore the entire database. We can't afford that.
Now that's fine. So we can't restore the entire database. Okay, sounds good. If the restore time's 45 minutes and that's a problem, you're not willing to pay to fix the problem. Okay, let me know when you do, right? So
yeah.
Now,
and I haven't
paying
been told
costs-
that. I'm just saying I know that's a factor. So you sometimes, if you're on hardware that you've already paid for, and your storage is already paid for, sure, as long as you're not running short on storage, great. Take that extra 2 terabytes.
Yeah, you basically have to have enough space for your biggest database to be doubled on the particular instance, right?
Yeah, and let's say you have 4, 5, 10 databases on there, and they're all 1 to 2 terabytes each, and you want to restore all of them.
Here's the thing. This causes problems. Everything is a trade-off, right? In my
Sure.
environment, only one database can be deployed at a time for continuous integration.
Okay,
So
that's
per
fair.
per environment. So that allows me to. There's other problems like that. That we get to sidestep because of that rule. And whenever we talk about, hey, sometimes 4 people want something deployed at the same time. Yeah, it's going to be one at a time. But if we don't, there's problems that you're going to have to solve. Are you sure you want to solve those right now? No.
Right.
Okay.
So
So
how do you solve that problem? If the 3 of us all want to deploy changes to 3 different databases that are 1 terabyte each, and each of us can only do one at a time, do you have a mechanism that checks that says, oh, Lee's already deploying, Anthony, sorry, you have to wait?
yeah, that's so but it's the mechanism's free, right? So let's say instead of deployments, we're talking about cheeseburgers, and we have an Uber driver delivering us cheeseburgers. That delivery driver cannot deliver all 3 of us at the same time unless we happen to be in the same house, right? So that delivery driver has to go to one of us first, and he has to drop off that package before it goes to the next. And that's our scenario, right? We have a dev and a QA and a prod machine that's tasked with this process. So the dev one can only do one at a time. And we've talked about
Right.
going to 2 or 3, but then it's like, here's some problems that we have to solve. Do you want to solve these problems? No.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
and then it's just cheaper and better to do this. And yes, sometimes that 100% happens. We've definitely had situations where someone is fixing something and this deploy cycle is deploying constantly, and then I go to deploy and someone else goes to deploy, and now we're behind that person. Because I'm sure we've all fixed
Right.
problems that like take. How about now? How about now?
Mhm.
How about now? It happens sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how. And then if you have in the scenario 10 databases and each one of them is a terabyte in size, because of that decision we've made, we only need an extra terabyte, not counting the extra space. So we have the amount that's healthy. We only need to add about a terabyte, 500 gigs, whatever size database is, to additional space, because database A goes, we get the hot swap ready. We're gonna do a test. If it's good, app dev barely knows anything's wrong. We go to B, we do that, and we just, as long as
Yeah.
we're cleaning up behind
Yeah.
ourselves, we're good. And again, this is a prod, right? So
Yeah.
I think
So
go on, please.
I was just gonna say, do we need to be looking into someone to raid?
Yeah, I can find
That's exactly what I was
someone
gonna
as we
say.
wrap up.
Okay.
I'll do that while you guys go ahead and
Okay.
do your
Your last
thing.
thoughts, Anthony?
Yeah. So the big thing is whether or not it's application code or it's database code, is you've got to have a quick cycle. You've got to, as soon as you have something that's remotely deliverable, not even deliverable, as soon as you have a unit of code that does something, put it out there into the pipeline and have it test and fail as soon as possible, right? You want to know something's wrong on dev as quickly as possible. So far, all the decisions, even some of them that are painful that I've had to make in order to make this happen, have felt worthwhile. Like I said, at first those pushback about deploying to dev constantly. We've managed to fix that. There was pushback about, well, I just want to hotfix on prod. It's faster. No, you've got to tone that down a little bit. Only push the prod once it's off the pipeline. Oh, but I know when it's done. Put in the pipeline. Yeah, 99 times out of 100, it's fine. But that one time that you find out that a change happened that would have affected it, and you found out before prod, it's worthwhile. So
Yeah.
I think
For sure.
that long as you do this in bite-sized chunks or hire someone that knows how to do it already, I guess you'll learn and you get through the pain points, and you'll be able to do all kinds of things. We've solved security problems using this. We've solved really hard QA problems with this. We've got test data that deploys automatically to Dev QA every time we refresh. So now the developers have fresh data that is tested with fake data that we can test, and it works flawlessly 60% of the time. No, it works flawlessly every time, because when it doesn't work flawlessly, we find out, we fix it, and we move on, and we're forced to fix it. Things don't stay broken. And I think it's a
Right.
beautiful thing.
So 80% of the time, it works every time. Is that what you're saying?
That's right. That's right. That's why it's time we fix it. So it'll always be good to go before it goes to QA.
Right.
I think
Cool.
it's a wonderful thing. It makes things much more efficient. Much
Do you think?
safer.
Do you think this is the finalization of this talk, or do you think we'll have another in the future?
I think we're done unless you guys have questions.
I think
I
this
think we're
brings
down
us
to move
in.
on.
This could bring us into test-driven development discussions. A lot of stuff can stem from this. There's a lot of really good base knowledge on things. So, looking forward to branching off from your discussions into, some more specifics about it. So.
Yep.
I'll put test-driven development
Mhm.
into our list of possible ones. So
You can even put that as a maybe I'll do a demonstration on how to write a failing test and how to write a passing test.
Cool.
That might be something that the viewers might like to see. Speak up in Discord if you would
everybody
like
loves
to.
everybody loves to see someone fail live on the show. Let's do it.
Damn. Blue screen. It's like, how did my program blue screen? No. It happened today. I was in the middle of a meeting and it's
Yeah.
blue screen. I'm like,
And
I guess I'll be back.
for people who are in the chat, I mean, next week the topic I think is we're planning on me loading up SQL Server Management Studio and talking from top to bottom about what you see, what is it, things to think about, and that sort of thing. So if that interests you and you're listening in Discord, then listening in our chat, then be sure to come back.
All right.
Awesome. We're gonna do some live demos. Yay!
Let's see if this Dream Elements, whatever. Anyway. I think that'll call it. Well, we're gonna raid Umli. She is playing Valheim right now. Really fun game. I enjoy playing it on my server. So go drop that file over to her, and make sure you drop the follow here if you haven't. And thanks to all the viewers and lurkers and anybody just listening or viewing later. We appreciate you just as much. So
Absolutely.
I'm O'Grady signing off. We got
Anthony.
And Lee.
there we go.
See y'all later.
We will catch you next time as soon as I can hit this button. There we go.
Good night, everybody.
10 seconds. Everybody ready? Everybody go raid and say that we sent you and be nice and hit the follow and support your local people. Bye.
Wherever they may be.